Good afternoon, everyone. This is Corey Strothman with Grace in Your Corner. I wanted to make a video today. Uh, Quite honestly, I woke up this morning watching the news. I've been very discouraged. My heart has hurt um, as the current state of what's going on in our country in regards to what's going on in Minnesota, what's led to other places across the country with the protests that have even turned into riots. But I want to explain my thoughts, my opinions. And when I started Grace in Your Corner, I wanted to create a platform that stood for what is right. And if I didn't sit here and if I didn't make this video, then I would be going against everything that I believe in Grace in Your Corner. And it might put some people and we might disagree a little bit, but this has to be said because it's time that I don't dance around the tough subjects, and I have to put this out there. Number one for myself, and number one for everyone out there that's struggling and grieving, and we have to put an end to this, and that is the racism that continues to go on in our country, and that is the inability to see the white privilege that continues to be had in our country. And there's so many things going out there, there's so many things being said, but I want to just paint some clarity on this. And I want to put some questions out there. No matter what side of the fence you're on this, I want to put some questions out there and have you to truly and honestly reflect. And I'm going to say things that I believe in my heart that you might not necessarily agree with, but to me, they have to be said no matter how uncomfortable it can make people. So let's just talk about this. And obviously, I want to go through just a few things in our country that have gone on recently that I've been following before the whole George Floyd in Minneapolis situation occurred, and what has led to where we're at now. So previously in Georgia on February 23rd, there's an ongoing case with a 25-year-old black man named Ahmaud Arbery. And Ahmaud was jogging down the street February 23rd and was chased by two white males, and he was shot and killed openly out in the public. And it took till May 7th, over 2 months later, for those two gentlemen to be arrested and charged with that murder. Over 2 months for someone openly killed, a black man openly killed, being chased down and gunned down, and over 2 months for someone to be arrested. Continues to go on there. It was recorded. The video was released by another bystander. This gentleman is now under arrest too, and I'm not an expert on all these cases, so I don't want to sit here and act like I am. Nothing bothers me more when people do that, but I just want to paint some of the facts out there. Let's move on to this week in Central Park in New York. There's a white lady that was in the park, and there is a black gentleman there that did not have his dog on a leash, and that made her very upset. He and her got into a semi-confrontation, and he was recording her, and what she had told this gentleman was she was going to call the cops and tell him that an African-American man is threatening her. Why would she do that? She did that exactly because she knows that she tells the cops that there's an African-American man that's threatening her, that is going to get them there ASAP, and it's going to be her word versus his word. And who do you think they're going to listen to? Luckily, this gentleman had it on tape, had it on film. But just a disgusting act to do something like that. An African-American man threatening her simply because he would not put his dog on a leash or calling the cops and getting them involved. And that leads us up to the George Floyd incident in Minneapolis just a few days ago, where Mr. Floyd was removed from his car from my understanding, because it all started with forgery on a possible forgery on a check, and ended up with Mr. Floyd on the ground in handcuffs, multiple police officers there with one white police officer putting his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck as he gasps for air, saying he can't breathe, calling for his mother who has passed for multiple minutes. I've heard up to 8 minutes, maybe 9 minutes. Mr. Floyd passed away. He's lying on his stomach. He's handcuffed, begging for air. Multiple police officers there, and we continue to think that it's necessary to have a knee on his neck, cutting him off for air, as people recorded it. And bystanders told him to let go. And no, not one cop. These 4 cops have fired on the spot. I think I just read that one of them was actually brought in today. But where, in what world is this okay? In what world would this ever be okay to take someone's life? That is flat out murder. It's killing. And it strikes my heart, because we're lying to ourselves if we say that race has nothing to do with all of these things that are going on. Imagine if that was your child, if that was your son, your daughter, your brother, your sister, your parent lying on the ground begging for air. It breaks my heart. I was raised in a county that was predominantly white. It's hard for me to understand these things, but what I understand more and more is that these are just a few things that were caught on film recently. Thankfully for film and social media, these things are being exposed more, but if these are just a few things that are going on, what else is going on that we're not seeing, that African American people have to deal with on a day-to-day basis? Which leads me to my next point, these protests. There's a lot of things, and a lot of people are talking about these protests. And yes, these protests are turning into riots. I am not condoning burning things down, throwing rocks at police officers. I'm not condoning any of that. But I have to ask myself, as a white male, instead of saying, why would they riot here? A lot of the times people say, well, why would they riot? Why would they do that? Why would they go out and destroy their own community now? Now they're making things worse. We need to stop and ask ourselves, are we truly listening to what's going on there? Because this isn't, yes, this George Floyd was gruesome, and it was the most recent thing. But too often it passes, and we're right back to where we're at. And instead of us sitting there and saying, yeah, that is terrible, these police officers need to be held accountable, we need to start looking at the bigger issue, in that this is consistent, and this is something that African Americans have to go through every day, and we have to stop ignoring that and making excuses that it would be different if we were in that situation. The reason that it would be different if we were in that situation is because we are white. I am a white male. I live one of the most privileged lives that you can live. And I'm not afraid to acknowledge that. But it should not be that way. These protests are people that are grieving and want to be heard. They're grieving and want to be heard. And here's the thing, time and time again, they're not heard. So they escalate the situation because they want something different to happen. They don't want people to not be held accountable, to think that this culture is okay for a black person to be killed, to be dealt this way. Because here's my question that I challenge every single person listening to this right now. If the roles were reversed and it was a black cop and a white male, if in Georgia it was a white male running down the street and it was 2 black men that shot and killed him, in a park if it were a black woman saying that it was someone else, a white male, calling him up, would the reaction be the same? Would the reaction be the same if it was a white man laying, gasping for air in Minneapolis? Or would there be someone charged right away? I think we all know the answer. I think we're afraid to talk about it. But as we see these protests, let me give you another example. In the state of Michigan, we've got white males, we've got also a group of white people, multiple, with automatic weapons sitting outside the Capitol building. What would have happened if that was a group of black males with automatic weapons? How would that situation been handled? But now we've got a black male with a check, a possible forgery check. And here's the thing that a lot of the time the questions that come back to is, well, there had to be something that instigated that before. We didn't get to see all the video. There was surely a reason why. There might have been. I don't know. There's never a reason why someone's knee goes to someone's neck for that long. There's never a reason that someone is gunned down in broad daylight because they're running down a street because of how you feel towards that, and we think that that's okay. I don't care if he robbed a store. I don't care if Mr. Floyd had money from that store in his pockets. That is not the way you handle a situation like that. It is never okay to kill. And my heart hurts today because I don't know how to help. And that's why I was adamant of making this decision, is I want to help be a part of the solution. I made it a goal to speak up for those suffering in silence from mental illness. I need to be just as strong and just as adamant as helping the minorities that struggle from racism in day-to-day life. Lauren and I were talking just last night. How do we raise our kids to be aware of that? We never have to worry about our kids as they grow up being stopped in a traffic incident and possibly being killed. We have black parents that are worried that their child, when they go out, could physically be harmed day in and day out. That is a terrible, awful way to live. But until we can acknowledge that we have white privilege and that this is a true issue, instead of just when it happens on a main national platform and we are cognizant of it day to day, it won't change. In these protests of trying to stand up, if you're going to go and protest, if it happened to me and it was my son and it happened to time and time and time again, and I'm sitting there and I'm holding a banner and I'm saying this isn't right and no one's listening, I'm going to get to the point where I'm frustrated too, and I'm going to escalate. Again, I do not condone what's going on, but I see and I hear the grief and pain. Are we listening to what's going on and why they're doing this? Or are we pointing fingers and saying they shouldn't be doing this? Now they've done and they've ruined their own community. Or there was probably more to the reason behind what was going on and how that situation was handled. We have to stop making excuses, and we have to start looking at reality. No one deserves to live in our country in fear, but I 100% understand that there are people living in fear, and I do not blame them because of these events going on. I'm going to start listening more. I'm going to start being an advocate for what's going on. And just another example is that in Minneapolis today, a CNN crew this morning was arrested on the spot and all brought in on national live TV because of this situation. covering the news. It looks like we're trying to hide what's going on. We're not trying to hide. We need to tell the story. We need to start making a difference. I'm challenging everyone out there to actually reflect on if it were you in this situation. It's very hard for us. I don't know. That's why I'm doing this. I don't know what it's like to be a male African American. I've got so many friends out there that I need to start listening to, and I need to just ask the question, what can I do to help? What can I do to help it ensure that you live and you get all the privileges that you deserve in this country, that your kids do, and what every person deserves? And the first place I could think of is I need to be vocal. And I need to stand up and show support. Instead of just saying, this is terrible, this is awful, I cannot believe it, we have to create action. We have to change this. So I'm going to be listening more and trying to understand more of what truly happens on a day-to-day incident and how I can help better. But what I can't do is I cannot turn on the news and see another person murdered, another person treated differently because of the color of the skin. It hurts my heart. It hurts what I'm about. It hurts what I stand for. Is we need to become the difference. And if you can truly sit here and tell me that in these situations that white people, if we flipped it and the white and the African American in the situation, that it would be handled differently, I am going to have to strongly disagree 100% of the time. So I challenge all of us. We need to start talking less, creating more action. Protesting, if you're going to protest, we're going to do it in a peaceful way. There's nothing more I'd like to see than peaceful protesting. But if we don't listen, if we don't make changes, then these protests are going to continue to turn into riots, because it is people grieving, people hurt, because time and time again, what we're telling them as a country is, it's sad, but it's not sad enough to make a change. We're better than that. I'm better than that. I challenge you to be better than that. So as we go for one person, one life is more than just a mental health slogan. One person, one life is also for all the African American population out there. It's for everyone, every single person. One person, one life. That's what I'm about. That's what everyone should be about. Yes, I understand that in these incidents, some people might be doing the wrong thing. They might have committed a crime, but how are we handling that crime? Because we can't create excuses for what we're doing and how we're handling it. We have to be consistent. We have to make sure that racism is not a part of our day-to-day life in 2020. For those of you out there that are suffering, for those of you out there that feel ignored, I pray for you. I pray that you get the strength. And for all of us, let's challenge ourselves to truly understand, to truly listen, to truly step back, put ourselves in those positions, and see if we can't create a better world that everyone deserves to live in. Have a great day. Thank you for listening, and God bless everyone.